The following content is intended for a mature audience. Viewer discretion is advised. The artwork was done by myself or by the commission. Please give the artist the respect and credit they deserve. This story takes place hundreds of years in humanity's future. Morality is not shared to the morality of today. Politics are not shared with the politics of today. And the characters are living in their own world with their own decisions to be made, with their own sense of what is right and what is wrong. Those who draw parallels between this work of fiction and the reality around you are morally bankrupt and mentally disturbed. With that being said, let us enjoy The Legends of Theia, In for a Penny. Chapter 1. An Heir is Born. The world of Theia is filled with many different scientific mysteries and wonders. To understand these wonders, one must first understand the world of Theia. Classified as a super-Earth, it is a world that rotates its sun in a similar fashion to that of Earth, within the habitable zone. However, the planet is quite a bit larger than Earth. How much larger? No Theian upon the surface of the planet is able to 100% agree upon its diameter. This is not due to the lack of scientific understanding in how to measure the planet, but the lack of technological saturation which would allow them to measure the planet's size accurately. To properly express as to why it is so difficult to gauge the size of Theia, one must first understand the scientific mystery of Theia's gravity. Theia possesses one Earth's gravity. Wherever one walks upon the surface of planet Theia, an individual will only experience one Earth's gravity. Despite this, Theia is quite a bit larger than planet Earth. Oros, which orbits Theia, is a volcanic moon that occasionally, on a 50-year to 40-year cycle, resurfaces its entire surface through volcanic activity, violent eruptions which eject matter into space, sometimes resulting in the landing of space debris on Theia's surface. Scylla, orbiting Oros, is the moon to Theia. Scylla was once an icy moon covered in glacier movements, but has since had those glaciers stripped away through solar winds. It is now a dry, desolate rock that is quite dense and has a significant gravitational pull. Murray is the smallest of the moons, which orbits Scylla. Scylla, in turn, orbits Oros, and Oros, in turn, orbits Theia, making Murray a moon. These three moons are responsible for many peculiar tide patterns on planet Theia, as well as the occasional falling of space debris from Oros's volcanic eruptions. This convoluted gravitational dance is somehow stable, and has been so for millions of years. It is not well understood as to how this stability is achieved, and is a scientific mystery of its own. Based on all scientific measurements, it is revealed that Murray is around the same size as Earth's own moon, giving strong clues as to the colossal nature of planet Theia. The planet is home to hundreds of many odd and peculiar biomes, a result of the terraforming efforts made by humanity. Hundreds of years before any human foot made its contact with the surface of planet Theia, small terraforming robots, approximately the size of golf balls, were fired in the millions towards Theia's surface. These small robots were given only two prime directives: to reproduce and to terraform the planet to be suitable for human life. Although many speculate as to whether or not these terraforming robots were effective in their goal, they have produced many wondrous natural phenomena on Theia's surface, one of which is the Grit Desert. The Grit Desert is Theia's own rice bowl, filled with small stones the size of a grain of rice. These stones filter through water, which mysteriously disappears underneath the Grit Desert. The Sir John River, the Susquehanna River, and the New Yukon River all terminate within the Grit Desert, disappearing below the Grit, not to reappear anywhere else. Although the term desert implies a lifeless, barren wasteland, it is anything but, and many desert-dwelling creatures exist just below the surface of the Grit. As well, the Grit Desert also is home to a large number of people living in the city-state of Sift. To the north of the city-state of Sift is the abandoned Bedlam, a city-state no longer controlled by humanity and considered lost to the Fey Wilds. To the east of Sift is the city-state of York, a small farming community under tremendous political pressure to join the Humanitarian Legion. To the southeast of Sift is Keystone, a Humanitarian Legion-controlled city-state existing within the Black Rock Ridge Mountains. Travel is difficult from Keystone, and they push hard on York to try and get them to join the Humanitarian Legion to make travel to places such as Bedlam more accessible. To the southwest of Sift is the elven city-state of Bower, who often have violent skirmishes with Keystone across the no-man's land of the John Dry Wetlands. The John Dry Wetlands themselves being under supposed authority of the Navy. Directly west to the city-state of Sift is the city-state of Slag. Well known for its massive steel industry, it has an uneasy alliance with Port John and that of the elven city-state of Bower, often balancing the political tension between the two city-states and wishing to maintain itself a sense of neutrality. Lastly is the city-state of Port John. This city-state is directly controlled by the Navy and is an ending terminus to their impressive rail line infrastructure that spans across a large portion of Theia's surface. This city-state is used as a staging area for the launching of ships down the Sir John River. Once these ships manage to make it to the Grit Desert, they must terminate and share their cargo with that of land ships that can make the final push towards that of Slag or to Sift. The Navy proclaims ownership over all territory connected directly by the Sir John River, which they claims feeds into the John Dry Wetlands. As well, they proclaim ownership of the large water reservoir that likely exists underneath the Grit Desert, thereby making an obscure claim between that of Slag and Sift for their projected ownership of the land. Between all of these city-states are a great number of homesteads that belong to members of the Fae, humanity, members of the Navy, members of Faeborn, members of the Elven community. However, to those living within the city-states, these are considered temporary dwellings, even if they are to exist as entire town communities for a number of 10 to 15 years. It is widely expected that all of these communities will eventually be wiped away by the brutal nature of Theia's surface. One such homestead was actually not a homestead at all. The Tenpenny Reserve, the private estate of one Mr. Percival Tenpenny, existed only a stone's throw away from the city-state of Sift. Upon the construction of the reserve, the city-state of Sift was completely abandoned, and, over the course of time, as the reserve began to grow, the city-state of Sift was once more inhabited by people. Mr. Tenpenny saw no benefit to trying to control the city-state itself. Instead, he much preferred his own private property next to the city-state of Sift. The Tenpenny Reserve, or the Tenpenny Estate as it was sometimes called, was arranged as an artillery star fort. This powerful defensive arrangement was designed in such a way as to allow it to endure any possible siege that Theia could throw at it. Whether this was from roaming terraformers, obstinate wildlife, or random gangs of raiders or pirates, the Tenpenny Reserve was designed to survive no matter what. It was not well understood as to why these homesteads would face so much adversity in comparison to the prefabricated city-state counterparts, that for the most part were typically left alone. The entire Tenpenny Reserve was constructed on top of an island within the middle of the grit desert. The grit desert, for the most part, were small granular pieces of grit, but any island protruding outside of the grit desert was typically stone, solid stone worn smooth by the gusting winds that would occasionally draw dust from the grit desert. These places were suitable for the landing of large structures, such as the prefabricated city tiles, or the construction of more permanent dwellings, such as the Tenpenny Reserve. The reserve's defenses were quite impressive. The first layer of defense was a small, narrow-gauge railway that well connected around the entire reserve and connected it into the city-state proper. This would allow Mr. Tenpenny to quickly hire such adventurers from the said city-state, or bring about any number of missionaries to quickly defend the structure. This was the primary line of defense against most small attacks. Adjacent to the railway was a stone and earthen embankment, where mortars, cannons, and sharpshooters could easily set up shop in order to assist in properly defending the Tenpenny Reserve, even if they were not properly employed by Mr. Tenpenny himself, but were instead simply drafted on short notice. After that was a large dry moat that surrounded all 12 triangular outcroppings that large artillery cannons could be mounted or placed. Sometimes these would be mounted with fixed machine gun positions. An internal railway kept 6 of these internal artillery battery protrusions well supplied with ammunition. The others could easily be restocked with mobile carts. The final layer of the Tenpenny Reserve's impressive defensive capability was that all staff were required on some level to be able to defend the facility, and were paid more for doing so. Even the position of a maid was expected on some level to be a light security guard, and, after completing a certain rigorous level of training, was then employed as a guard and a maid. This dual position would grant them dual pay, and there was a heavy incentive for those working within the Tenpenny Reserve to be highly trained. At the center of the Tenpenny Banking Reserve was the vault itself, and only Mr. Tenpenny knew that building's secrets. He and the select number of people who were allowed to work inside, who were sworn well to secrecy. Living in the reserve was the Tenpenny family. Depending upon who you'd ask, they were either the most notorious, most famous, most wealthy, or most controversial family in all of Theia at the time. And the great story I'm about to unravel is the passing of power, from one Mr. Percival Tenpenny to his daughter, Genevieve Beaumont Tenpenny. But to simply highlight the greatest moments of this story would not give you a full picture, and to start from the very beginning would take far too long, so we will simply start at the beginning of the youngest member of the Tenpenny family at this time, Genevieve Beaumont Tenpenny. Daphne Vivian Tenpenny, also known as Lady Daphne to those around her, was currently lying in a bed. This room was not her own. It was, in fact, her prison. She was locked there against her will by her husband, one Warren Percival Tenpenny, Warren Percival Buttman, before they were married. As to why she was incarcerated against her will, it was quite simple. She had a thirst for alcohol, an insatiable appetite that she'd had ever since she was old enough to first sip her first glass. Unfortunately, that age was far before the legal drinking age, even for one world as wild as Theia. Her father was well known for spoiling her, giving her anything her heart desired, and living amongst the higher class people, she often had a distorted view of the real world. Through a childlike, dramatized lens, she often looked down upon others, especially those who worked with their hands, or performed some kind of craft. Even those of refined taste and skill, such as musicians or artisans, she had a tendency to look down upon. She was wealthy among even the wealthiest of planet Theia, and for that reason, she believed herself to be something of notable descent. In truth, she herself had no real skill to speak of, if not for the one skill of being able to put away the alcohol. It was, in all honesty, her father's spoiling nature that made her this way, and later would make her vulnerable to the likes of Warren Percival Buttman, later to be Warren Percival Tenpenny upon their marriage. The deal he made with her father was quite simple. She shall maintain ownership of everything throughout our marriage. I shall simply maintain control, so long as I am honest, trustworthy, and true, and I take care of her every need and whim. I will maintain control. Then power will be handed from me to your next heir. The man didn't understand as to why Percival would agree to such drastic conditions, but he simply said they suited him fine. He could do what he wanted to do in life, and he could accrue the wealth he wanted to accrue, and then he would simply hand it all down to his daughter, which would then be the man's granddaughter. The two men shook, and thusly, Daphne Vivian Tenpenny's fate was sealed. Shortly after the passing of her father, Warren Percival Tenpenny locked Lady Daphne in a room by herself. Once sequestered alone, sobriety began. A long, ongoing process to stabilize the woman and get her alcohol-free was underway. It lasted far longer than Warren expected. He thought perhaps she had smuggled in alcohol, but could hardly figure out as to how. A quick check of the lining of her dress found tubes filled with the substance, and once all possible stashes were taken away from her, finally sobriety took hold. To say that Lady Daphne suffered in the room would be inaccurate, but to say that she was comfortable would be most certainly inaccurate as well. Lady Daphne found herself in a perplexing mental condition, in which she attempted to dramatize her own life and view it through that of a television lens. She saw herself as an actor upon the stage, and all the world her theater. In a moment deprived of drama, she truly did suffer, finding herself drab and boring. She felt as though her skin was crawling, and there was nothing but the abyss of alcohol to entertain her. But upon the implication of any such drama as being kidnapped, sequestered in a room, or forced to bear child, she found herself entertained once more. Still with drink in hand, usually, she was at least able to enjoy the play of her own life. This was a serious mental condition that often debilitated her through life, but in this one particular circumstance, being forced to bear a child she had no real interest in, she found it quite bearable. In fact, she often would write down in her personal journal various dramatizations of what she might name the child or what the child might be like. Their various escapades in escaping the abusive husband who often cared for her every need and gave her anything her heart desired, much to the spoiling of her, for spare the rod, spoil the child. Midway through the pregnancy, Warren was able to acquire a surrogate mother for his child. He was well aware that a drunkard would make no suitable parent for a proper heir to the great Tenpenny fortune. And although he cared nothing for the fortune once his time had come, he was interested in the idea of raising the perfect heir, and to this he had to find the perfect maternal figure. He found this in a rather odd synth that had been going around the various orphanages, attempting to acquire a human child of her own. The orphanages had turned her away for the fear that a non-human entity would not make an excellent mother for human offspring, despite her vast knowledge of child-rearing. The synth's name was Anya, her personal number was W647, and her single-minded doggedness at chasing the human reproductive system was the kind of obsession that Warren Percival Tenpenny liked to exploit. He offered her one thing only: complete ownership of his daughter, the sole acknowledgement of maternal rights. She would be above everyone, even himself. The only requirement is that she watch after his daughter as though she were his own, and prepare her for receiving the Tenpenny fortune. She happily agreed, not even bothering to negotiate wages, although Warren Percival Tenpenny was happy to pay her a healthy sum. This sum was mostly used for furnishings and ensuring the proper well-being of her child, despite having a proper allowance to do so. At the end of the pregnancy, finally, Anya W647 detached from the ceiling to look upon Lady Daphne and give her one simple piece of advice: to push. Daphne went into labor, and nearly an hour later, her daughter was born. Upon several hours of recovery later, Lady Daphne was able to drag herself out of the room that she had been imprisoned in all those years. She dramatized the idea of freedom and finally reuniting with her one true love, alcohol. She had left the room without her daughter, and without bestowing upon her daughter a name of her own. At the time of his child's birth, Warren Percival Tenpenny was away on business. It was left to Miss Anya to name his child. She had been briefed several times about possible acceptable names, ones that exuded power, elegance, regalness, and authority, and she chose from this vast list. Genevieve Beaumont Tenpenny, she said, as she held the child in her hands. It was her daughter's. No one could depose that. It had been decided by the most powerful man in all of Theia, and the two of them would be alone in this room together for a very long time. The synth disrobed herself and opened a cavity in her stomach to place the child within. Then she filled herself with an oxygen-rich environment and allowed her to incubate under ideal circumstances. This synth had one business and one business only: the propagation of only this child above all others. Miss Anya's obsession with child-rearing was never fully understood. She had modified her body in every conceivable way, from that of synthetic mammary glands for the feeding of the child, to her body's own heat generation for the warming of beds. In every conceivable fashion, she was the peak maternal figure, but one thing was never understood: the reason for why. Warren Percival Tenpenny hardly cared, so long as it served its function. After 3 months had gone by, Warren Percival Tenpenny had returned from a long business trip from across the globe, and now he was ready to meet his child for the first time. Entering the room after so many days of life was the first human face Genevieve Beaumont Tenpenny would see. Her own father, Warren Percival Tenpenny. He looked an older man than he truly was. He was actually quite youthful still. Despite this, his hair was gray, his beard was gray, and he walked with a cane, not for a crippling nature, but simply to use as a bludgeon if he ever should have to use one, and he often played to his old-looking face, allowing those around him to believe him to be a decrepit old man. "I have been told that my daughter has arrived," he said as he entered the room. Anya chided him. "She's not some package, and yet we refer to it as a delivery," he said, banging his cane upon the ground. "Now then, open yourself up. I know she's in there." Anya rolled her eyes and opened her midsection up so that he could see his daughter lying within. "Oh yes, then. Let's have a look-see," the man said as he lowered himself to look upon his own child. "Thank goodness she was not born with my ugly face. It suits me well as a businessman, but would hardly suit a young lady. I'm very happy to see she has her mother's shiny copper-colored hair from when she was young. It oxidized since then. I wonder if hers will do the same. Oh well. You shall have to let me know as soon as she is speaking. I shall love to come in and have a conversation with her from time to time. For now, I shall get out of your hair, so to speak," he said, gesturing to the synth's lack of follicles. "Until then, young lady," he said, standing up straight, turning about and preparing to leave the room. He did look back at Anya for one brief moment. "Ah, yes, before I forget to ask you, what is the name of my child?" Anya looked back at him. "Genevieve Beaumont Tenpenny." He seemed to mouth it to himself for a moment. Yes, an excellent name. It shall suffice. He then turned and walked briskly out of the room to attend to other business. That would be the last time he would see his own child for nearly 3 more years. But in young Penny's eyes, a single photograph was taken in her mind, a single image cut through the mist of early infancy, a familiar face, that of her father. For whatever reason, that cut through it all, and she clung to that image, the image of someone she believed loved her. "Looks like Daddy's gone," Anya said to the infant now resting in her stomach. "I do believe it'll just be you and me for quite some time." And indeed, time did pass. Hours turned to days, days to weeks, and weeks to months. The only human contact that Anya had was the occasional delivery of supplies by servant cart. They would drive by the room, drop off the necessary supplies, and then hop back onto the cart where its electric motor would then hum and they would drive away. She would then collect the supplies at her leisure. She had no interest in collecting them early or contacting anyone outside the room. The only human she cared about was her child, and other than that, she had no interest in other human contact. The child's mother, Daphne Vivian Tenpenny, would go so far as to enter the same side of the compound as her own daughter. She would romanticize about being reunited with her, a child whining for its mother, reaching out for her in the darkness as she was so oppressed by the luxury and wealth that surrounded her. Of course, that only got her out of her own room, out of her own dwellings for the evening, but as soon as she rounded the corner and drew closer to the responsibility and the weight of actual motherhood, she would quickly sink back into the drunken shadows from which she had risen from. Months eventually turned to years, and as the years stretched on, eventually it became obvious that Genevieve Beaumont Tenpenny would need an advocate for her human interests, as Miss Anya had no intention of ever leaving the room in which she taught the child everything and cared for her in every way possible. A former adventurer was brought on to advocate for Penny's human interests. Miss Anya protested this heavily, but Mr. Penny was able to talk her down with a simple and very firm reprimand. "You take care of her physically, but mentally, I'm finding you lacking. If you cannot produce satisfactory results, I shall have to deprive you the luxury of the audience of my child. If you cannot get along with Mr. Silas, then he shall take on as primary caregiver." From that moment on, Anya had accepted that there was someone else who had control of what was best for young Penny. Silas was a caring man. He was simple and calm. He very rarely spoke loudly or above his own voice. Instead, he had a stern glare that expected those around him to behave. The only thing left over from his adventuring days were his gloves, which allowed him to easily lift many times over his own weight, even above his head. He could toss furniture around as though it were made of styrofoam, or easily hurl entire boulders if he wanted to, although he very rarely used the gloves for this purpose. Instead, he simply used them for household chores. It was when Genevieve Beaumont Tenpenny was 4 years old that Mr. Silas had truly stepped in. "Anya, has Penny seen the outside world? Has she touched grass or looked up at the sky yet?" "No. For what reason would she need those things?" He slowly put a glove upon his face. "Come along. It's time we all go for a walk outside." She shrugged and held the child tightly for a second. "We have everything we could ever need in this room to raise her." "No, we do not. We do not have the great outdoors in this room, I can assure you. Now come along, the both of you." The synth reluctantly picked up young Genevieve Beaumont Tenpenny and began to walk her out the door. "Goodbye," she said, quite firmly. This small utterance could be translated as, "Where are we going?" Anya, who was a machine, and running every possible language simulation in her mind, was able to understand young Genevieve Beaumont's Tenpenny a little bit, and this was only worse for her linguistic skills, as she was not learning proper English. "We're heading outside, my child," she said to the young lady. "Do not answer the child if she's not speaking English," Silas scolded. "It's important that she learn how to be a young lady and speak properly, even at this young age." Silas stood outside the manor home. They were currently in a dry cycle, that is, a time within the Grit Desert that rain does not fall heavily. During this cycle, the grit is bare and dry like sand. He happily picked up the young child and placed her down in a shadowed portion of the grit. "She'll get dirty," Anya protested. "Exactly," said Mr. Silas. "She's going to get dirty for the first time in her life. Let her play in the grit. You know, there is a benefit to this." Anya was already bent down, wishing to pick back up the child to clean her. What benefit could that possibly serve? "You get to have bath time with her, a deep clean from the grime. Certainly you're not going to turn down that opportunity." Immediately a flash flew across Anya's screen as she ran the simulation. "Well, I suppose it wouldn't hurt for her to play in the dirt a little, but I do expect extra bath time. After all, I should be afforded an infinite water allowance to bathe the young miss." "Not infinite," said Silas. "You'll have an extended water allowance." Water being an expensive commodity within the Grit Desert, and although Mr. Tenpenny could afford it, everyone still kept to some kind of regiment. That way, they could be frugal. Time passed, and the visits outside began to grow in number, as well as grow in length. Young Penny went from a simple toddler that simply pawed at the surface of the grit, to a fine young lady who was allowed the basic tools of excavation: a shovel, a small plastic bucket, and a rake, although that rake was not used. She jammed the small metal shovel down into the grit. She had done this before, but this was the first time in her life she had ever truly set forth to dig a deep hole. One scoop after another began flying out of the small hole she was divoting into the ground. "I think I can get down deeper this time," she said to herself. It didn't take long for her to learn proper English once she was allowed outside of the baby room. Many of the adults that she passed by were chatting back and forth, and she finally understood what some of the words meant. Anya had always answered her in perfect English, but she also always understood exactly what she was saying, even if what she was saying didn't make much sense. Penny was an adventurous child, as most children tend to be. As she scooped up a load of grit and flung it through the air, she paid close attention to it as it scattered across the yard. She noticed some small pieces that were bigger than all the others. These turned out to be nothing more than the occasional nut or bolt. During the wet cycle, the entire ground would be covered in thick, viney clover. She asked Anya as to how this occurred. Anya explained that during the wet cycle, in which rain falls from the sky, the entire Grit Desert gets soaked, and the terraformers rise up from the grit to try and cover the desert in foliage. They eventually sink back down into the depths of the desert when they're done, and the dry cycle shortly appears after. Afterwards, desert creatures begin to rise up out of the grit and munch on the resulting growing foliage, eventually returning the Grit Desert to a barren wasteland. Penny had found interest in the wet and dry cycle, and desperately wanted to go outside to see the rain, but this was strictly prohibited. No resident of the Grit Desert wished to be outside anywhere during the rain. During this time, not only were there large terraformers stomping about on the grounds above, but occasionally large creatures would be disturbed from their burrows and rise up out of the Grit Desert. In fact, during a wet cycle in general, people tended to stay inside if it could be helped. The only way Penny could see to find answers to these questions was to simply search for them herself. Shovelful by shovelful, she dug deeper and deeper into the ground below until finally, Her shovel stopped, clanking hard against something made of metal. She looked around, and Mr. Silas was enjoying himself, drinking a cup of tea. Anya had finally taken her robotic eyes off of Penny for a moment, and was enjoying herself as well. Her version of enjoying herself was, of course, to hand-stitch a brand new dress for young Penny to wear to events that she had no plan of actually taking Penny to, along with preparing tonight's dinner in her mind. She was already working out the perfect recipe and ratios based upon the air temperature around her, as well as the humidity. With both her prominent parental guardians distracted, she looked down into the hole at what her shovel had struck. It was a small metallic ball, unassuming, and didn't seem to have many features upon its surface. She reached down and attempted to pry the ball out of the hole, but it wouldn't come at first. First, she'd have to widen the hole with the shovel, which she did quite quickly. After several moments of heavy labor for a child, she had managed to free the metallic sphere from the hole. She looked at it with pride as she held it as high above her head as she could. It shined in the sun. It didn't seem to have any serious features that described what it was for, and when she set it down in the lofted grit, she rolled it about with her hands. "What are you?" Penny said to herself as she closely examined the sphere. On the bottom of it appeared to be 6 protrusions that were now hugged tightly to the surface of the sphere. It made the sphere feel completely round, but if she dug into it with her fingers, she could feel the grooves. They were packed tight with grit and perhaps rotting plant material. She couldn't tell what this thing was, but she knew she wouldn't be able to take it inside if it was dirty. She walked over briskly to a small source of dirty water. This dirty water was for cleaning shoes and car parts and other such materials, not expected to be washable for hands, and she dunked the ball inside. She quickly picked up a nearby scrub brush and began giving it a once-over. Ripples began to form on the surface of the dirty carriage water. Young Penny watched as the ball sank violently down to the bottom of the trough. She reached her hand in to try and retrieve it, but could no longer feel it directly below her. It had moved within the trough and was now scuttling to one side. "Where did you go?" she said to herself. "Come back here. Come on out." She encouraged the ball several times to enter her line of sight once more, but as her hands moved to one side of the trough, it would move to the other. When she followed it, it would once again move to the other side of the trough. Finally, she fell in a little bit, getting the front of her dress all wet. As she pulled herself back out, one of the legs of the creature had clung to her dress, and now sticking to her front was a small, yet heavy, metal terraformer that was clinging to her. Young Penny had always heard that terraformers were colossal mechanical creatures that behaved like animals, hell-bent on trying to terraform planet Theia into being more hospitable for human life. They had gone haywire and could no longer be controlled by anybody. They did whatever they pleased, and often this meant with a great deal of destruction in their wake. But this particular terraformer was downright tiny. It clung off the front of her dress, and she could easily hold it, although it was quite hefty in her small hands. "Well, look at you," she said to herself as she began to play with the little metal ball. Its legs moved up and down as her hands tried to feel them, and for the most part it didn't seem hostile. Once she set it on the ground, it seemed more interested in what the contents of the water trough. "Oh, you want more water," she said as she reached in to grab a cup and fill up with the dirty liquid. "Here you go," she said as she began to pour it on top of the metal ball. The metal ball seemed to somehow take the water into its body, and then, as soon as it was prepared, it began to roll along the surface of the sand. The grit was wet only momentarily, and then it seemed to have something shiny left behind upon its surface. "What is that?" Penny asked. She examined the surface of the grit. Although she saw exactly what it was, she did not completely understand what it was, so the answer eluded her. What Penny was observing was the moss ball terraformer's primary function, to roll around on flat surfaces and spread moss, clover, and grass in equal measure all along that surface. What it was leaving behind was tiny seeds distilled in a kind of fluid that allowed them to stick onto surfaces. This special variant of the plants would grow and then immediately reproduce into the normalized variant of moss, grass, and clover. Many of the residents and workers of the Tenpenny Manor had wondered how the inside of such a massive artillery fort was always covered in moss every time the rain had finished, and they never truly had a good answer. There was certainly no giant stomping terraformer moving around the inside of a heavily armed base, but it would appear there was a very small one, indeed moving quickly to spread as much moss and grass as possible. Penny began rolling the ball all along the ground where she could, and began pouring out some of the dirty liquid to satiate the ball's thirst for more liquid. She decided to name this little ball terraformer Sprout. Penny did not completely understand the function of a moss ball terraformer at this time, but that hardly mattered to her. It was friendly, it obeyed her commands, it seemed to be interested in her physical contact, and it seemed to follow her wherever she went. For these reasons, she decided right then and there it would make an excellent first pet. After she had named it, she gave it a simple order, to go out far and then return, and it did so. Next, she gave it another order to collect some water out of the trough, and it did so. She then ordered it to return to her side and prepare for new commands, as it did so once more. Penny did not realize the phenomenal nature of these commands and the fact that a terraformer was willing to obey them. Mr. Silas just so happened to look up at his cup of tea as Penny was tossing the ball up into the air and allowing it to land with a rolling start to get across the ground. It would then happily return to her in the hopes of being thrown once more. As he sipped from his tea, he casually asked Anya, "That is certainly an interesting toy you've devised for her. How did you make it?" Anya also shared a glance over towards the young child. "Toy?" Miss Anya's eyes scanned the surrounding area. She immediately identified her charge, of course, the young Miss Penny. Then she scanned and identified all surrounding objects, starting with the ones closest to Miss Penny. There was a plastic shovel, a plastic bucket, a moss ball terraformer which registered as a threat, and several large rocks that Penny had clearly unearthed from the ground. Then her processes stopped immediately and began focusing on the moss ball terraformer. Anya's powerful legs immediately kicked over the table as she sprang into action and darted across the open grit towards the child that was her charge. She was above young Penny in only a moment, as Sprout was rolling across the ground. "What are you doing with that thing?" she asked. Penny looked up with an innocent smile. "Mommy, look. I have a new pet. I've named him Sprout." No, Anya said as she picked up the child and began moving her away from the creature. "You may not keep that thing as a pet. I have not authorized any pets." "Oh, yes, I can," said Penny. "See, he does whatever I says. Come here now, Sprout." Sprout immediately rolled across the ground and grabbed onto Anya's leg and began crawling up her body to try and return to Miss Penny. "Oh no, she said, trying to kick the creature off. "Whatever this thing is, it needs to get off me now. It's a terraformer. It's here to spread grass and burn crops or do something of that nature. Get it off me." She tried to pick it off and throw it away, but it only came right back immediately. "Mom," Penny demanded, "it's my pet. It follows my commands, not yours." Anya rolled her eyes. "Sweetheart, it's a terraformer. It doesn't follow commands. It's just an animal. It does whatever its instincts tell them to." "No," Penny retorted. "It does whatever I say. Sit, Sprout." Immediately the ball sat down. Silas, having picked himself up off the ground and righted the tables and chairs, now was wiping tea off of his jacket and was approaching from behind. "What's the commotion?" he asked, clearly. Penny looked at Mr. Silas with pleading eyes. "Mr. Silas, tell Mom to let me have my new pet." "Your new pet?" Silas said ponderingly as he looked at the mossball terraformer. "Oh, that can't possibly be. Sit, Sprout," she interrupted. The ball did as such. "Now roll away." The ball did as such. "Now come back here." The ball sprung back to life and did as such. Mr. Silas immediately put his hand to his mouth. "How did you—" Perhaps this is not actually a terraformer. He got down low and tried to reach for it, but it immediately snapped its little metal legs at his hand. "Nope, that's definitely a terraformer. How did you get it to obey you?" "He obeys me because he's Sprout. He's a good boy," said young Penny. "Come along, Sprout." Immediately, the creature jumped into the air and grabbed onto the bottom of Penny's shoe and began crawling up her body. Anya immediately took her metal hand and attempted to pry the creature off of her daughter. "No, no, 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 no. This is a wild animal. We must remove it from the estate immediately," she said, trying to pry off the little metal creature. Once she had successfully done so, it began clinging to her and crawling about her body. Mr. Silas happily took Penny away from Anya for a moment as she struggled with the creature. "Miss Penny, please get your pet under control." "Yes, Mr. Silas. Sprout, you need to sit now." Immediately, the ball clamped shut into a round sphere and fell to the ground. Then it began to drag itself over towards Penny where it sat obediently at her side. Silas seemed aghast at what Penny had accomplished. "Now how in the 3 moons did you accomplish this? It's actually obeying your commands." "Of course it is," she said. "He's my little pet." She reached down and pet the top of him as Anya tried to drag her away once more. Silas began to ponder to himself for a moment. "Well, I guess if it does obey you and means no harm—" "Oh, absolutely not," said Anya. "I'm not letting that thing on the carpets. It would be spreading moss everywhere, the walls, the ceilings. Everywhere would end up a lush garden in the place. I'm certain it will obey Penny for now, and it is an object of interest. I think we should probably tell Penny's father." Mr. Silas ended his conversation and began to ponder off. He didn't directly tell Anya she had to let the creature in the house, nor did he directly tell Penny she could have it. He simply found something more interesting elsewhere. Penny immediately threw her tiny hands up into the air. "Mr. Silas said I could have it." "That is not what he said," corrected her mother. "Yes, he did. Young lady, don't argue with me. Mommy, don't argue with me," she said, glaring at the mechanical creature she called her mother. "Sweetheart, it's a robot." "So? You're a robot. I'm a synth." Penny looked there, puzzled for a moment. "I don't think I know the difference." "I'll explain it to you when you're older," she said, picking up the small moss ball and trying to get it to roll away. "Well, I think Daddy should decide," young Penny said, stamping her foot. That was Anya's weakness. A small exclamation point appeared on her screen. Ugh, that's exactly where Mr. Silas is going. "Okay, fine. You can come inside for now, but I'm making my point to your father that we should get rid of it." "Yay," Penny said. "I can ask Daddy if I can keep it, and he'll say yes. He gives me what I want." No, sweetheart. I give you what you want. He just gives you what you need." "So he gives me what I need and you give me what I want?" "No, I give you both of those things. He gives you only one of those things." "I think he also gives me the things I want sometimes." "Well, we can agree to disagree on that." Over radio telegraph, An urgent message was sent out for one Mr. Warren Percival Tenpenny under the official Tenpenny Corporation's coded language. The language was sent to a telegraph station, and it was decoded using the Tenpenny cipher. The message was then handed to Mr. Tenpenny himself. "Well, let's see what this is," he said, holding the telegraph up to his face. "Mr. Tenpenny, stop. We have urgent news that requires your attention. Stop. Your daughter, young Penny, Genevieve Beaumont Tenpenny, has managed to tame a terraformer. Stop. The creature does whatever she says. Stop. And appears to be following her every command. Stop. This revelation requires your immediate attention. Stop." Mr. Tenpenny looked up from the letter at the various people surrounding him at the table at which he was eating dinner. They were rough-looking pirate fellows, some of them missing eyes, some of them missing hands. They were eating with forks and knives, and a few of them with their missing appendages. Not a single one of these salty sea dogs was missing a scar upon their face. All of them seemed to be rough fellows, and they were happily dining with one of the most powerful and terrifying men in the entire world. "I'm sorry to bring this up, Captain, but I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut our little business dealings short. It would appear that my child needs me at the moment, and there appears to be a business opportunity afoot, so I'd certainly hate to miss that." "Of course, Mr. Tenpenny," said the pirate. If you'd be pleasin', I'd like to drop you off at the nearest suitable station, if that is to your likings." "It would indeed be to my likings," he said. "I shall rest within my quarters until it is time for me to depart your vessel." He walked off the bridge as though it was no big deal. The pirate took a deep breath and ordered his men to lower altitude and bring them to the nearest train station. A young sailor looked up at his grizzled pirate captain. He was so young he had only a single scar upon his face, cutting his lower lip in half. "Captain, if I might be so bold as to ask a imprudent question." "You might be so bold now that Mr. Tenpenny has left my bridge." "Why are we hosting one of these fancy high society guests? I don't know who this fella is, and why do we care what he thinks?" The pirate captain immediately stomped his foot down on the floorboards. "That be one of the most terrifying men I've ever met in my life, although he doesn't seem it. I be stealin' some of his gold once, out of one of his finance trucks that be goin' from one bank to the other. He repaid my kindness by giving me this ship that we're sitting upon, and a whole satchel of gold to go with it. Then he laid out a financial plan as to how I'd be paying off my loan. You listen to me here, boy. If you want to go against Mr. Tenpenny, you have only one of two options. You do whatever he says whenever he says it, or you put a bullet right between his eyes, and trust me, he'll know if you're planning the latter. I owe him for the vast vessel you see before you. I owe him for the large sums of gold in our treasury, and I am terrified of that man to my bitter core. He rifles through your pockets after filling them with loot. But he's the man doing the rifling, and don't you ever forget it." Mr. Tenpenny was on his way home to visit his child. He said as much in a small message sent back to the Tenpenny estate. When young Genevieve Beaumont Tenpenny was given word that she'd be meeting her father face to face for the first time, she was beside herself with excitement. She remembered him, if only barely, and she'd heard about him in stories. The occasional awkward glance down a hallway in which she managed to capture an image of her mother was far less interesting to her. Not because she had any scornful feelings towards her mother, but simply because her mother did not seem as an interesting person like Mr. Tenpenny was. The entire place, they said, only existed because of Mr. Tenpenny's ambitions. And the missus never seemed to seek her out even though she was so close, within arm's reach. As far as she could tell, Mr. Silas and Miss Anya was all the parental guidance she needed. But Mr. Tenpenny, her father, was something special. A sort of mystery she could only chase, something heard about in legend and fable. Not actually real, not something she could hold in her hands, and now, she was told, he was coming to her very doorstep to talk to her. She couldn't believe how excited she was. End of Chapter 1. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this sort of content, please do not forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Your interactions drive me to make further content about the legends of Theia, and this world is ever increasing in size and shape. Please do not forget to leave an interaction, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. For now, I'll have to be saying goodbye.